Vernon. I'm Sarah Stio, your social media manager, and joining us today we have our Director of Preservation, Thomas Reinhardt. How are you today, Tom?
I'm well,
Good.
Sarah. How are you?
I'm excellent.
Good, and good morning, everybody.
And we are going to kick off today our season of giving and our 5th and final year of the Preservation Challenge. And Tom's going to tell you all about that. But before I kick it to him to tell you about the challenge and about what we've done with your help here over the past 5 years, just a reminder to let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Ask us your questions. I'll be looking as they come in. And in the meantime, while you're thinking of your questions, I'm going to turn it over to Tom.
Thanks, Sarah.
You're welcome.
So, as Sarah mentioned, this is our final year of the Preservation Challenge. It seems like yesterday that we kicked this off, but this is our 5th year of doing this. And over the course of those 5 years, the Preservation Challenge, if you've been following us over those years, you know that what that means is that between now and the end of the year, every dollar that is donated to Mount Vernon will be tripled by Karen Wright, a very generous donor from Ohio. So if you give us $10, we end up with $30 to carry out our mission. Over the past 5 years, we've done some amazing work with your donations. So I have a list here of just a few of the things that we have actually accomplished. So between 2014 and 2019, we repaired and repainted 10 of our dozen 18th century outbuildings. We replaced we replaced 8 roofs on our outbuildings and repaired and repainted 4 more. In 2015, we repaired the roof of the mansion and restored the cupola, putting on a brand new finial that exactly replicated the 1786 finial, which is in our collection. In 2016 and 17, we finished 2 bedroom restorations, the chintz room and the blue room. In 2017, we began our study of the East Lawn, which, as you know, has had subsidence issues, and we are now about to kick off in 2020 the work to repair the ha-ha wall and to stabilize that slope after a long, in-depth investigation as to what was causing the problem. In 2018, we opened the front parlor. It was a year-long project. We conserved that paneled room. We conserved the ceiling. The curators were able to update the interiors of that room, the furniture, the artwork, based on new documentation that had been found at an auction house. In 2018, 2019, we repaired the garden houses. As a matter of fact, we're still working on that north garden house. That roof is due to get put on by the end of this year. And in 2019, we, of course, worked on the west front of the mansion. If you joined me during Preservation Month, May of this year, you were there week by week as we worked through that. From April until October, we put up scaffolding, we stripped off all the old layers of sand and paint. We made 600 repairs to the mansion. We restored all to the west front only. We restored the windows. We then repainted and resanded, and there it is. This is at the peak of its beauty. It really was. It's magnificent. Everybody in preservation is super proud of what we were able to accomplish this summer. But the key is that when I say we, I don't just mean the team, the preservation team. Steve Stuckey, our conservator, Caroline Spurry, our architectural historian, Eric Litchford, our preservation specialist, Seth Gottlieb, our preservation specialist, our carpenters, Dave Weir, Brad Collins, Amy McCauley, Andy Compton, who's one of our conservators. That team, that we, includes you, because you're the people who have funded this, right? We get no government subsidies. We're not owned publicly. We are a private organization that accomplishes what we do solely through the donations that you give us and solely through the revenue that is generated through our shops, through our gate revenues. It is on you. You are a full partner in the work that we do, the stewardship of making sure that Washington's home is a state, the home of over 300 people enslaved and free in the 18th century. That is something that you make happen, and we just take the benefit of your generosity and we put it into practice. So thank you very much for those 4 years of support. But here I am again for the last time to beg once again for your donations. Remember, anything that you give will be tripled. So let's put that into something a little more concrete. Let's just go over here. So let's say that this is the side of the kitchen. This is one of the buildings, one of the outbuildings that got restored. Let's say that your money restored this siding board, this level of siding, right? If you gave your money during the Preservation Challenge, that meant these two other siding boards were restored as well. If your money accomplished the restoration or conservation of one window in the mansion this summer, that meant we were able to pay for 3 window conservations in total. That's what the Preservation Challenge allows us to happen through your generosity and through the generosity of Karen Wright. So we encourage you to give between now and the end of the year. We also especially encourage you to give on Giving Tuesday, December 3rd, where we're going to have another Facebook Live with Caroline Spurrier, our architectural historian, and Marvin Amaya, the lead painter on our mansion restoration project this summer. So I wanted to show you a little bit more about what is left to do, right? Because it seems like we've done everything, but we haven't done everything yet. If we come over here and look at the gardener's house, which, like the mansion, has rusticated wooden siding, sand painted like the mansion, but you can see that we are experiencing the same sorts of failure that we had on the mansion, because when this new treatment in 2011 was put in place, it was actually on top of probably a similar 28 layers of paint that we had on the mansion. So you can see how thick that buildup is. It is probably mixed media of latex and oil. It's just not going to hold up. So what we need to do is the same thing that we did to the mansion. Strip it down to bare wood, make repairs, and then repaint it and resand it exactly the way that Washington's painters did in the 1790s. You saw that kitchen over there. I'm going to ask Mason to pan back so you get kind of a pulled out view at how good a shape that is in. Some of those siding boards, I'd say probably from about the 5th board up, the overwhelming majority of those boards are the surviving 18th century boards. That's insane. There are very, very few estates, plantations that have that level of preservation. And it's because for over 160 years, the Mount Vernon Ladies Association has been curating and stewarding these resources. I'm going to move over so Mason can get out of the sun here. They've been stewarding these buildings based on donations like yours from the 1860s, when children were sending in pennies so that that this restoration campaign could begin, all the way till today with the money that you send. It's been a continual collaboration between the Mount Vernon Ladies Association and the people of America and the world. It's your generosity and the generosity of your ancestors, really, that have allowed this place to survive. And so we are very, very grateful. Now, you see the kitchen behind me and you see the shape it's in. I want to walk down now to look at the smokehouse. Now, as we go, if you look up at the roofs, the smokehouse got a new roof, the wash house, which is the next building down, that got a new roof, the coach house got a new roof, and then all the way down at the end is the stable. That had its roof repaired, and all of them were restained with our new, the new stain that we have been using for the last number of years, which is very similar to what Washington put on and actually allows us to recoat without having to strip it down. So we're saving money, we're being more efficient by using this new product that hadn't been used in the past. But if you look at the siding of the smokehouse, that square building with the open door, you can see that it's in terrible shape. Well, part of the problem for us is that we know that some of those boards are original, and we know that some of those boards are replacement. And we're working through documentation to identify which ones are Washington era and which ones aren't. And then once we figure out which ones are Washington era, we have to come up with a strategy about how to conserve those Washington era boards and save the ones that we can save and remove and retire and put them in our collection, the ones that we can't leave on the building. So when we finish that building, it will look as good as the kitchen does, it'll look as good as the wash house does. But right now, we have to do that 1 to 2 years worth of research before we can actually start that project. And when people see a building in this condition, they think that we don't care about it. Well, we keep it painted, we're keeping it sealed up, but those boards are showing their age, which is in some cases over 250 years old. So that's the everyday maintenance that we are faced with here at Mount Vernon. And it's really easy to raise money for, oh, let's restore the west front of the mansion. Let's save the iconic cupola. Those projects are easy to raise money for. Fixing the kitchen siding, fixing the siding on the smokehouse, they're not as exciting as these big projects that you see on our website. So it's your continued support of the Preservation Challenge that really allows us to do those important projects which make this estate whole, right? I mean, when in the 1860s, the board or the ladies asked an expert to come and to consult with them to find out what they should be saving here at Washington's home. And they were told to save only the mansion and the tomb because everything else wasn't important. Well, they rejected that advice. And now today we have one of the best preserved 18th century plantations in the United States. And we are able to interpret the lives of the hundreds of enslaved workers who built this place, who made this place run for the Washingtons. And that's an important story that has to be told. It's a story we love to tell as much as the story of George and Martha Washington and their family. So if the ladies had not saved these buildings, and if we don't continue to care for them, then those places that were constructed by enslaved workers, that were inhabited by enslaved workers, that were made to run, the spinning house, the wash house, the activities that kept this plantation going in the 18th century, those places, if we don't save them, then those parts of the story disappear, and that's not something we're going to let happen here at Mount Vernon. And we know that you want those stories told because you support our work so generously. So if you have any questions, I'm really happy to answer them. So I'll turn over to Sarah and see what our questions are. Here she is.
Back in. So first of all, thank you to John and John. We had two Johns just donate, so thank you very much for your donation. Just a reminder, you can donate by clicking right below in the Facebook Live post. And we had Patricia say hi, Tom. Love the work you do at Mount Vernon. We had a lot of people thanking you for keeping Mount Vernon up. You and your team.
It's really a privilege to work here.
It is. I would. We actually had a question that I think is a good lead-in from Lisa yesterday. She said, "I'm grateful for all your efforts. What is the greatest preservation need? And related to that, what area is the most difficult to maintain?"
Well, I mean, I do think that the greatest preservation need is this ongoing maintenance. As I said, when we discovered issues with the frame of the mansion, we've been raising money for that. We've been easily raised the money to do the study for that. Now we're in the planning phase, and I think we're going to not have a problem raising money to stabilize the frame of the mansion. Not a problem, right? But it is, as I said, taking care of these little buildings where the everyday life of hundreds of Americans took place. They unfolded daily. But those are the things. Painting them, keeping the roofs in shape, making sure the windows aren't leaking. It's those little day-to-day maintenance projects that are really difficult to fund. I'd say so that's really the most pressing issue that we have, and in some ways the second part of the question was what's the most difficult to
maintain.
Right. Well, I think paint, keeping the siding boards painted. It's always a challenge because that paint, these buildings, remember, they're out in the elements 365 days a year. They're beaten by sun in the summer. They're frozen by cold temperatures and snow and ice in the winter. Those boards are expanding and contracting all the time, and that paint is put through its paces, and it starts to crack, and it starts to peel, and we've got to be there, Johnny on the spot, ready to cover up those 18th century siding boards so that we don't lose them.
Thank you, Tom. So we have some other questions coming in from Amy. You had mentioned the brick foundations here, and she's wondering if the brick foundations of any of the buildings are original, or do they need to be replaced or repaired occasionally?
So the foundations of the mansion are definitely original. We can see that from the cellar. It's a little more difficult to tell with the outbuildings, and that's because the bricks are all handmade, and it's sometimes hard to tell the difference between a 19th or a 20th century handmade brick, especially one that's replacing an 18th century brick, so it's the same size and they try and match the color. And then also all of the joints, all of the mortar that fills in and holds the foundations, holds the bricks together, that's all been replaced a number of times over the course of the lives of these buildings. So it's so we don't see if there's original mortar on the inside. So I would say that we probably have surviving brickwork, but that it's been heavily repaired over the years in order to make sure that these buildings are sitting on, or they have a good foundation.
Very good. And
Now we're going to go this way.
I'm just going to walk so we can see the mansion. We all love the mansion. So we actually have someone named Tom watching from Scotland.
All right, excellent.
And he has a very specific question. He said, did indentured servant Scotsman William Webster get around to making any bricks in between his escape attempts? Do you know anything about the Scotsman?
The name is familiar. I don't know the entirety of his history. And by the way, Tom, I was in Scotland this summer for the first time, and I loved it. It's a beautiful country. So keep watching Mount Vernon, because there's really great connection with the preservation that I saw going on over there. Visited a lot of great historic houses, and I brought some of those ideas back here. So, Scotland forever. I don't know. I know the Washington's the majority of the brickwork done here is done by a family known as with the name of Triplet. It's a father and two sons, and they come here and they burn bricks on site, which is the typical way you do it in an 18th century plantation. Source the clay, make the brick, build the clamp, burn the brick, which is actually the bricks make the clamp kiln, and then they take it apart and use it for construction projects. So I'm very familiar with the work that the Triplets do, but unfortunately, I'm sorry, I don't know William Webster's name.
Yeah.
That's as I said, we have a huge amount of information about enslaved workers, indentured servants, free white laborers. They're coming, they're going, and so off the top of my head, that name is not one that I can say much about.
Matt has a question. He wants to know when you have to replace materials on the building, how do you do that to ensure it remains accurate?
So we use the same. So if it's wood, we use the same species of wood. We do try to use wood of a similar quality. So we're looking for old growth timber if we can get it, which means the first growth in the continent. Some of that is there are still some stands of trees that get taken down, and if that timber becomes available, we'll try and use that. But a lot of times the wood that we're using is being reclaimed from historic buildings that unfortunately have been taken down, and rather than have that timber be lost, just thrown away in a landfill, there are timber dealers that will salvage it, and then we'll purchase that and cut it down to the sizes we need. But we match both the species, we match both quality, and then we're trying to work those the parts that you can see in the same way that it was in the 18th century. So if you look at the back of one of our siding boards, you'd know 100% that it was a 21st century siding board that was put up in the 21st century. But when you look on the face that's visible to the public, it looks like an 18th century siding board. There's no plain marks of a mechanical planer. It all appears as it would have in the 18th century.
Very good. Thank you, Tom. So Amy has a question. How often do you check the buildings for damage that need to be repaired?
Well, we do a full annual survey on every structure on the estate in the historic area. But we're always out here, and we're always looking. And we also have our interpretive staff, the people that meet you and lead you around when you come and visit Mount Vernon. They are great partners. They are our eyes, they're the front line, and they always report when there's an issue, if there's a problem with one of the buildings, because they're interacting with them all day, every day. They let us know. So we get a lot of information from the folks that are actually using the buildings while showing visitors around. But we're out, the preservation staff is out here most days, and we're obviously always have our eyes open for problems that are nascent. We want to catch them as early as possible, but we do full surveys every year.
Excellent. Thanks, Tom. So we have a question from Clay. It's actually about the little parlor, which I don't think we've talked much about. But he's wondering what's happening in there, if there's any updates that you can share.
Well, right now, nothing is happening in there except carbonation. And haha, that's a little plaster joke. So a few weeks back, we replastered the west wall of the little parlor. We had removed 20th century plaster when we started fire suppression install. I don't even know how long ago it was. It's been without plaster for quite some time. We opened up one of the bays in the wall and installed the fire suppression pipe. Returned that 18th century lath back to its exact location using the same nails, tightened them up with little brads, and now we have just replastered. So when I say it's carbonating, the plaster is going through the process of drying, but really what happens is that it's taking in carbon dioxide and it's hardening and basically sort of turning almost back into a stone-like, that hard plaster stone-like substance. So that's a chemical process that's going on right now. That will take, for it to be fully cured, it'll take probably until the summer, and then our plans are in the summer that we're going to repaper and repaint that room.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Clay. Thank you for everybody that's been asking questions. We have time for just a couple more, so we have a good one from Al that actually might be a really good wrap-up question. Do you think the preservation work will ever be completed?
That's a very easy thing. I was like, lobbing the softball in. No, it will never, ever be completed. We've got wooden buildings here, but it doesn't matter whether a building's made out of wood, made out of stone, made out of brick. If it's out in the elements, it's always continually deteriorating. So our job as the preservation team at Mount Vernon, as the greater Mount Vernon community, our board, our president, all of our employees, right? Our job is to preserve in perpetuity these resources, which, as I said, are continually degrading. They're always getting worn down by the elements. So the preservation work never stops. It's never going to end. People will ask, well, when will you be done? Right? Well, the minute that we are done, we're going to have to start again, like the painting of the Golden Gate Bridge, right? They start on the one side, they work to the other end, and then they go back and start again. It's such a huge undertaking to preserve this place, to preserve any place in the world. And so it's always going to be, there's always will be a need here for your support. There will always be a need here for a vibrant preservation team. And I can say, I've done this work for a long time, over 25 years, that my time here at Mount Vernon has been working with the best preservationists, conservators, architectural historians of my experience. We've been extremely lucky. I've been lucky to have this team to work with, and that's allowed us to do the great work that we have done. And over the past 5 years, your support in the Preservation Challenge, donate $1, it turns into $3. That helps us immeasurably because we're just constantly planning for the next project. Our fundraising team, our development team, likes to say they raise the money and we spend the money, and that is true. And we spend it for you. We spend it so that you can come here and see this place, and your children and grandchildren will be able to come here and see this place. So thank you again for all your support throughout the year, before the Preservation Challenge, after the Preservation Challenge. We rely on you. You're part of our team.
And thank you, Tom.
Thank you,
for
Sarah.
joining us today.
These have always been fun.
We love it. We love it. And we'll see you. Hopefully y'all can tune in on Giving Tuesday on December 3rd with Caroline and Marvin at 11 a.m.
All right.
See you guys then.
Thank you very much.
Bye.